Welcome back, gang. We are finally on our next episode of Something Copious, Something Capacious, Something Cajunga. We are working out the kinks. Chris is behind the scenes right now, making sure we don't have more audio issues like we did last time. We've got mics now. They cost a little bit, but hopefully it will improve the quality of the show. And as we promised, we are finally going to sit down and talk about Zack Snyder. I know most of the people that I am already intimately friendly with have heard this opinion 1,000 times and are sick of it. So we're going to offer it to the rest of you and see what you want to do with it. And it's been 12 years since Man of Steel came out, and I can't remember exactly what Comic Con it was before that where he announced that he was going to be the one tackling a new Superman project. But I remember as the announcements slowly started rolling out, hey, I'm going to direct this movie. Hey, this is the lead that I cast to play Superman. Hey, this is the first promo image of Henry Cavill as Superman. It was an excitement that built for me because 7 years earlier we got Superman Returns, and that was the first Superman movie I got to see in theaters. It came out in 2006. It's directed by Bryan Singer, and here I am thinking, this guy did X-Men and he did X2. He knows how to make good comic book movies. And suddenly we watch Superman Returns, and it is just 2 hours and I think 45 minutes worth of the question, must there be a Superman? It didn't have a lot of good action pieces in it. It had maybe 2 or 3. And that's not a good way to sell a comic book movie where there's no action in it. That's comic book movies are supposed to have pretty
What are we doing here?
righteous action pieces. Otherwise, you're just sitting there in a cape looking sad. And that's what Superman Returns was. The plane rescue scene was great. The whole, him going back to Metropolis when all the earthquakes from New Krypton forming out in the ocean, they were less flashy, but they were still good. But most of the rest of the time, I've always said that the only good parts of the movie are the parts where he's actually Superman. And even then, he's just, there's a whole creepy scene where he just flies to Lois Lane's house and spies on her while she's making dinner with his X-ray vision, looking like a sad panda. And it's 2 hours and 40 odd minutes of the question, must there be a Superman? Because the world learned to go on without him after he left for 5 years or whatever the time was. So then they announced Zack Snyder is making a Superman project. And I thought, once again, oh man, we're coming off of 300 and Watchmen, which were very flashy comic book action movies. This inspires me with a lot more hope. And maybe it'll be done right this time. And so, once again, the promo images started coming out. Oh, hey, we cast relatively unknown Henry Cavill in the role of Superman. He's a handsome guy, why not? And I had just watched him I had watched the movie Immortals because he was in it, largely because I wanted to see something that he was in before I went to see Man of Steel.
Fair.
And they were like, hey, he's getting ready to be Superman. He's got this movie Immortals coming out. Y'all should go see that. And I hate that movie, which probably should have been an indicator, but that's not, that's not an indication of his acting talent. That's just a movie I didn't like. But I liked 300, and I liked Watchmen, and Dawn of the Dead isn't a comic book movie, but it was still a movie that Zack Snyder did with it, at the very least, entertaining action pieces in it. And so, that in mind, we go through this early promotion. Hey, here at Comic Con, we've got the first promo poster for Man of Steel, not Superman, Man of Steel. And it's Superman just kind of dead eye in the abyss, looking a little bit like a Batman, a Batman pose, just brooding as hell. And yeah, it's a darker take. All right, well, let's see what he does. I'm still here. I haven't left yet. Let's watch, listen, and be amazed. And then they put out the early teasers for it, and one of those was included one of the controversial scenes that started making people really take a close look at what we were about to watch, really start to pay attention to this brand on Superman. And in the scene, Clark Kent has basically just recently saved a bus full of school children from drowning. And with one of these children in tow, his mother goes to the Kent farm and confronts Martha Kent, and she says, "My son saw what Clark did," demanding an explanation, almost in a self-righteous way. And in a way, I'm thinking, your son is alive. Why do you need to understand the conspiracy? Why do you have the red conspiracy yarn and you're just tying it all to get why? But whatever. So anyway, Martha Kent is trying to deflect, and Jonathan Kent goes out into the yard to talk to Clark in an almost prodding way. I don't remember exactly what their conversation is, but he basically challenges Clark. He's like, "What were you thinking? Why would you expose your secret like that? Why?" And Clark, feeling admonished, is like, "What was I supposed to do? Let everybody die?" And all of a sudden, hold your hats, folks, Jonathan Kent says, "I don't know. Maybe." What? What? Who is smoking in this writer's room? And then, these are all my initial thoughts. Why? What a jarring thought for Jonathan Kent, heartland of America, you do what's right no matter what, to suddenly throw out there for consumption. And so it was a pretty wild, jarring thing to hear Jonathan Kent say, for him to throw out in a Superman project. And it didn't leave a good taste in anybody's mouth. Or at least it didn't leave it in mine. And so we're all waiting for something to make us feel better about it. At least I was. And maybe even the same teaser, maybe one later. It's been 12 years ago, at least, since we've sat down and watched it. So I'm not real sure 100 what the exact dialogue is or when, but I know that people didn't like that. There was a lot of controversy behind it. So later we get another promo where they're in the barn and Clark doesn't have any answers. He's still a kid. He's trying to understand where he came from, his place in the universe, what he's supposed to be doing. And he just asked this human question, can I just go back to being your son? And Jonathan Kent is like, you are my son. And so we all felt a little bit better. It's like, oh yeah, well, he understands. He, whatever that was, we're probably not understanding the context there, but we like this better. And again, this is probably just what I thought. So I go to see this movie with a good friend of mine, and I'm trying to be excited despite, just what exactly am I walking into here? What's going on? I'm still trying to be excited. I'm still there for it. I've got my tickets. It's opening day, folks. I even posted something on Facebook about it. I was like, I can't believe it. Zack Snyder, this is going to be an awesome, just action-packed Superman movie. Let's do it. Let's go. And we start getting through the movie, and it's strange in places, and everybody's free to, when you're doing a new take on a classic, they always find their own special artistic flourishes. Well, I did this with this thing. Well, the other guy did that. Well, us over here, Superman's gonna have two heads. And without going down a whole rabbit hole, at least right at the moment, about artistic flourishes that you take with source material, which people guard close to their heart like it is their divine spiritual center. You don't mess with the purists. It's just it's not going to bode well. But so we sit down, we watch the movie, we're getting through it. We get through the whole scene where Clark saves the bus full of school kids from drowning. We get through the whole scene where Jonathan admonishes him for it. It's like, what were you thinking? You got to be careful. There's no Santa Claus. He's basically laying it down hard. Well, you flash forward a little while, and later in the movie, you get to a scene where Kansas is experiencing a tornado disaster, and they're in the car together. They've just had an argument. He and Jonathan. Well, the war, and I don't remember exactly what all their dialogue is, but John, he's, well, you're not my real dad. And fuck, that one hurt me. Ow. Oh, I shouldn't have said that, Suddenly they get to the highway to get out of town, and it's jam-packed with people. Cars. People are getting out of their cars to go take shelter underneath overpasses, stuff like that. Well, they can't get any further, so they also get out of the truck to go hide underneath the overpass, only they forget the dog is still in the truck. And for whatever, Jonathan is like, you stay here, I will go get the dog. Starts running back across the freeway. Manages to fall and break his leg right in the middle of the road. Still gets back up and hobbles over to the truck and lets the dog out. Dog, 4 working legs, takes off across the road like a bat out of hell to safety. And he's stuck. He basically cannot get back across the road on a broken leg to safety himself. And Clark is about to just take off, use his abilities, and save his adopted father, Jonathan Kent. And realizing that doing so would expose him to all the people there, Jonathan Kent's just like, no. Let it happen. Let me go. And you see him spirited away by the tornado, and all of a sudden Clark just loses his mind. Appropriately so. And he let himself die to protect Clark's secret because it wasn't the right time, or because whatever the rationalization was for the scene to play out that way, for the writers to write it that way. I don't know. Zack Snyder comments often that the movie was all about first contact, and there's a couple of conversations that he has about when you finally do reveal yourself to the world, it's going to change everything. And I don't feel like that's Jonathan Kent. Jonathan Kent would never, sure, he'd sacrifice his life to help others, but He would not coach his son to be fearful of those around him, to avoid doing the right thing, to avoid being exposed. I wasn't feeling that. Like, it was jarring to me. It turned me off. But I'm still there. I'm still trying to stay with it. Stay locked in, stay with the movie. Be present. And one of the artistic flourishes that I liked was that Clark Kent meets Lois Lane before he ever goes to Metropolis, before he is a reporter at the Daily Planet. They meet each other because he is just an extra set of hands on for lack of a better experiment, a better explanation. He is one of the hired hands basically on an expedition to do research in the Antarctic on an alien ship they found, which is Kryptonian, which is why he's there. But nobody else knows that. And so that is how they meet each other, because she wanders off alone and he rescues her from some of the ship robots that are designed to protect it from intruders. And they attack her, and so he shows up and he saves her life. And that's how they initially meet each other. And so she just eventually, oh, who's this guy? You know, this nameless, voiceless, near faceless cipher wandering around the country, saving people at random and then disappearing just as quickly. And because she's Lois Lane, she manages to track him down all the way to his father's grave. She gets all the way to the name Kent. Then she gets all the way to Jonathan Kent's grave, which is where they find each other again. She knows him before he's even Superman. She's in on the secret before there's even a secret to be in on. And that was cool. That was a dynamic that I can appreciate. That is not such a dismantling change to the lore. Movie progresses. Zod shows up. First contact. Hey, me and all my other Kryptonian buddies, we don't like you. We're going to turn Krypton. We're going to turn Earth into New Krypton. Go on and on and on. All the way to the final confrontation. The threat of New Krypton has been dismantled, but Zod is still there, and they basically trade blows just because Zod is now pissed off because he can't do the only thing that he was built to do, which is protect Krypton. And they fight each other all the way into a train station, and Superman knocks him to the ground, and he basically pulls him up off the ground into a headlock, and Zod is like, well, since you've destroyed the only thing that I cared about, I'm going to destroy the only thing you care about unless you kill me. He's got him in this headlock. Zod activates his heat vision. He's basically tracking it along the wall to this family that is huddled in the corner. Human family is basically just sitting there holding each other, prepared to die. And Clark, because he's not even Superman really, keeps, stop. And rather than doing anything else other than begging him to stop, like flying off with him into space, somehow kryptonite becoming a part of this confrontation, what Zack Snyder gives us on his first movie in this franchise that he wants to start is Superman breaking Zod's neck. First movie in. Pulls a move that has never been done before in Superman films, in live action Superman films, when we've just gotten the Christopher Reeve movies and Superman Returns. I think he did it just to be different. He wanted something that was going to get people talking. He wanted something jarring. And he got it. He did it. He provoked a conversation. And And I think it was too much, too big, too fast, and he ran out of room. How do you untangle that? How do you sell that move to young kids who wear Superman on their pajamas? I don't think you do. For a lot of us, that left a bad taste in our mouth. But that was Man of Steel. And I don't even dislike it. I disagree with it. Let me say that as my final thought on Man of Steel for the time. I don't dislike it. There's a lot of things I think it does right. It's finally a Superman action movie, but there's just things I didn't agree with. So we move on. We wait a couple of years. They say, hey, we're going to make another Superman movie, only it's not just going to be a Superman movie, it's also going to be a Batman movie. It's going to be Batman and Superman. Two titans together on the big screen for the first time. Couldn't have been a fan and been even with Man of Steel back in the prologue, we couldn't have been more excited for Batman and Superman until they started making more announcements about it. You know, they announced, hey, Ben Affleck's going to be Batman. I was there for it. I remember when they made the announcement, I was even excited because I enjoy Ben Affleck. I'm thinking, oh, it'll be different than Christopher Nolan's interpretation of Batman. It'll be, hopefully they won't do a massive, oh, hey, you know, Martha's pearls fall to the gutter in Crime Alley thing. Oh, shit, they did that, didn't they? But the hope was that we would not just get more Batman origin, that we would actually just have an established Batman, that there would be no look back, we would just have Batman and we could move on. And, you know, it would be Batman and Superman. And as they started announcing all the characters that were going to be in this movie, you know, some of them seemed important. It's like, okay, well, Lex Luthor's going to be in this movie. Well, that makes sense. Batman and Superman need an antagonist to come together on, and like, oh, well, we don't like each other, but we got to learn to work together. Lex Luthor makes some sense. Maybe there's some plot here that I'm not seeing, but it's all going to come together. It's going to be fine. Well, then they announced that Jesse Eisenberg was going to be Lex Luthor, and I almost feel like I need a separate video to talk about him being Lex Luthor, which I'm not going to make because his performance in the movie isn't worth mentioning more than just this once. It's hardly even worth mentioning the once. But then they said Wonder Woman is going to be in this movie, and she's going to be played by Gal Gadot, which is one of the single best casting decisions I've really ever seen. I was actually very impressed with her. And it hurts nothing at all that she is very, 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 very pretty. Doesn't bother me in the least. And believe me, she has acting talent. I'm not saying she only worked out because she's attractive, but it doesn't hurt. But then they started making the other announcements. Oh, hey, Cyborg is going to be in this movie. Oh, hey, Aquaman is going to be in this movie. Oh, hey, The Flash is going to be in this movie. And suddenly, the more they announce characters are going to be this movie, the more it feels bloated with characters, the more it feels like they are just making this movie to set up Justice League. Like its only purpose isn't even to tell its own story. It is just to say, hey, gang, Justice League is coming. Because DC had to compete with Marvel. And they were in a scramble to catch up, because by that point, Marvel was already on Avengers 2, headed towards Captain America Civil War, which coincidentally is also another movie about two heroes being antagonistic to each other. But because there is so much going on in Batman v Superman at any given time, and the movie is bloated with characters, it leaves a lot to be desired, and they give Batman more of the action pieces because he hasn't been in the franchise up until now, and it's only the second movie in, but he apparently needs more to do. He needs more to drink over, or to obsess over, or to brood over than Superman does. So Superman just gets a montage of him dragging a cruise liner or whatever out of the Arctic. Shot of him being swarmed by people who want to worship him like he's a god. A shot of him saving the crew of an exploding space shuttle. You know, he just gets a little montage. He doesn't get any great big action pieces of his own. And that's upsetting. I wanted him to have more fun in this movie, but that's not what Zack Snyder's vision is. Superman doesn't get to have fun anymore. Superman doesn't get to be innocent anymore. Superman has a calling and a responsibility. They never even explain why he wants to do it. They never. Hey, Jonathan and Martha, you know, they raised me to do right and to care and to use my abilities to help people. There's never any scenes like that. He just becomes Superman because why? Because why? Because people already know that Clark Kent just grows up and becomes Superman. I mean, anyway, I digress. So, one of the things about Man of Steel that was engaging, that was interesting, was that as a young boy, he struggles to learn to control his abilities. He struggles to be able to hone them, to use them properly, to train them so that he's not constantly overwhelmed, especially his super senses, so he's not constantly overwhelmed by sights, sounds, smells, everything. And there is a scene in Man of Steel where Martha Kent teaches him how to use his super hearing to train him to focus on the sound of her voice until there is no other noise. You'd think that'd come in handy. Alright, so flash forward again. Let's go back. Let's go back to Batman v Superman. Somehow Lex Luthor has figured out who Clark Kent is, that he is Superman. And because he's an asshole, he kidnaps Martha Kent and is holding her hostage somewhere. Now, one of Superman's probably useless abilities is his super hearing. Rational mind says, why wouldn't Superman, now understanding that his mother has been kidnapped, use his super senses to try to find her? Super hearing. Maybe. Only there is no scene in the movie of him trying to find her using his super senses. In fact, he just goes straight to Batman. Doesn't bother looking for himself. Nothing, just, I gotta get Batman's help. Only, here's the kicker, folks. We find out that Zack Snyder filmed a scene where Superman is up in the sky using his super senses to try to find Martha himself. And Zack Snyder, in retrospect, is explaining all of his creative decisions. Hey, we shot this scene, but it was distracting, it was upsetting and depressing, and it just turned a dark moment on the movie when we were trying to keep things rolling. So we cut it because Superman is unable to focus on Martha's voice. He just hears too many cries for help, too many people in need, and he can't escape all of those calls for aid. There's just too many. There's too many people who need his help. He can't focus to find Martha because too many other voices are shouting out. And I read that excerpt from that interview he gave where he explained that, and I'm like, so you're worried about a scene in a dark and depressing movie being too dark and depressing for the dark and depressing that you're already trying to get to? Okay. I'm still here. Let's keep going. So I'm still in the movie. I'm still watching it. And as I watch, we get to the scene where Lex Luthor is in the fortress of solitude, because it's not a proper fortress of solitude. It's just the Kryptonian ship that he's decided to do all this shit in. And whatever his plan is, he's got the corpse of Zod, and he's in this embryonic fluid. And basically, he Frankensteins the corpse of Zod into Doomsday. So the second movie into this franchise, we're already on Doomsday. Are we really going to do the death of Superman, the second movie in, when the world within the films doesn't really know how to feel about Superman, when none of the characters in the films know how to feel about Superman, when the audience watching still isn't sure about this franchise? We're already doing the death of Superman, the single biggest event in comic book history. That is a lot to do 2 movies into the franchise. That is way big, way fast. You really just ran out of room. At least for me. And we talked about this in the previous episode. The whole you gotta save Martha scene, it was great. I was there for it. The Batman warehouse fight was one of the coolest action pieces I'd seen in a long time. I thought that was a great thing. But doing the death of Superman in that movie, that was a misfire. That was too much. And there's that shoehorn, they just shoehorned a scene in of Batman basically watching closed circuit camera footage of other Justice League characters. He's learning about them for the first time, and it just feels forced in there. It's like I said, the studio's like, you got to use this movie to set up Justice League because we got to catch up. Marvel is already 9 or 12 movies in. They're on Avengers 2, headed towards Captain America 3. We got to get to Justice League, and we got to get there now. Studio heads, what do they know? But not only is all that going on, we also have to deal with the whole nightmare aspect of Batman v Superman, because Batman keeps having, you would imagine, prophetic visions or dreams of a dystopian future where humanity has all but been wiped out. And Superman is a tyrant, seemingly under the control of the anti-life equation. Great, we're building to tyrant Superman. Why are we doing this early? What? And and I rail against the idea that, he's basically being forced to do a lot of it by the studio just because they're like, we got to catch up. But at the same time, I read a lot of his interviews that he gave where he is explaining a lot of what his creative decisions were. And I don't agree with you. This is stupid. Why do you want this way? If you want to tell if you want to tell dark, brooding, jarring, this ain't my Superman stories, don't make Superman movies. And I mean, Stephen Colbert said it a few years later where he was forced. He talked about how strange it was on one of his opening monologues that Zack Snyder is basically making all of these wild artistic decisions that are... Superman is a character that children wear on their pajamas. And you're turning him into a character like the Punisher or Ghost Rider, one of these other, real out-of-pocket Marvel Knights characters, or Spawn. This is not a Superman I recognize right now. And I don't know if we'd ever get there. But, I mean, even in the opening of the movie, let's not forget, even in the opening of the movie, when we are first reintroduced to Lois Lane, we are introduced to Jimmy Olsen for the first time. And he is killed in the only scene he's in. Or it's like part of his his artistic liberty was, oh, hey, I'm secretly a CIA agent planted at the Daily Planet to investigate whatever the hell it was. And he's executed because they're both caught and captured in the opening scene they're in. And he's executed. And Zack Snyder later is like, hey, I had so much else I had to do, but at least he's in the movie, right? I mean, that was still fun, wasn't it? It's like, fucking no, it wasn't still fun. If you're just going to do that with him, don't use him. What the fuck are you thinking? And also, again, by the end of the movie, the world is left to wonder about Superman and whether we've all been wrong. And maybe it wasn't as bad as everybody thought. And it's another 3-hour essay on the question, must there be a Superman? And we did that already with Superman Returns. So, now I'm sitting here, I'm not excited anymore. It's really like you left a drunk teenager behind the wheel of a car. Not only is he drunk, he's pissed off. His girlfriend just broke. She said, steering wheel. So we got a bad taste in our mouth by the time we get to Suicide Squad, and we're just faced with near miss after misfire after too close a call. And we get the theatrical version of Justice League, which, they started talking about the production issues that they were having. And, and they made no secret of the announcement, when it happened. They're like, oh, well, Zack Snyder had to step away from the movie to deal with a personal tragedy. Which, I can't fault him for that. And I'm not going to go into what the personal tragedy was. Anybody that's a fan knows what it was. And I'm not going to use this platform to insult him on the state of his loss. Because there's nothing funny about a death in the family. And there's especially nothing funny about losing someone to suicide. That's too hard. And so they announced, Zach's going to step away from the project to deal with personal tragedy, and we're going to bring Joss Whedon, who directed the first two Avengers movies. Very good films. We're going to bring Joss Whedon in to do our pickups. Not a big deal. Quick 2-week reshoot. And, we were really relying on what we were told at the time to be the truth. Only after Justice League came out in theaters, and I enjoyed what came to theaters, let me say that. I enjoyed it. But after that movie came out, we started to get a picture of how different it was from what Zack Snyder intended to do. There were a lot of scenes in the initial promotional pieces, the trailers, pictures that Zack Snyder posted on social media of things that were going to be in the film that weren't in the final product that initially came to theaters. And we sit there and we wonder why. We wonder, well, what happened? What were you going to do with this? Why is it so different? And over the years, more pieces of information come out that make the project less polished, less about what he was trying to do, less about what we got, and more about the studio forcing his hand on a lot of things, apparently. They wanted a project that he didn't want to deliver. He wanted to be able to do whatever he wanted. And meanwhile, he started dealing with a family tragedy. And at one point, he was like, all right, I'm too tired. I've got too much going on. If you guys want this, you make it. I'm going home. And so I think it was 2021, Chris, does that track? 2021 was the Zack Snyder cut. Isn't that when we started? Because that was the first thing we did. We watched Zack Snyder together. I want to say it was 2021. We got the Snyder cut, and we sat down and watched it on HBO or Max or HBO Max or whatever it was called at the time.
4 hours and 2 minutes.
Yeah. 4-hour movie, and all that talk, all that. Well, this is what I was trying to do, and this is what I wanted to do, and the fans, meanwhile, have been roaring for the past 4 years and this is us speaking in 2021, not right here in 2025, but for a long time the fans were screaming, restore the Snyder Cut, Snyderverse forever, all the movements, all the cults. And they finally gave it to him. So they were like, all right, we're going to let Zack show you what he wanted to do. We're going to release his version of Justice League the way he intended it. And I will give that movie some credit. Because despite the fact that it had his name on it, it was probably the one I liked best of the trilogy. And that's not to say that I still don't have issues with the movie. But it was better than the things I had seen thus far. There was less of a focus, I will say, on the nightmare aspect that they were trying to sell us on. The whole, hey, 5 years in a row, Darkseid's taken over. Superman is infected with the anti-life equation. He's basically wiped out all of humanity all by himself, down to the last bastion of characters. The Joker, Batman, Cyborg, Deathstroke, Wonder Woman's dead, everybody that's still left, all the villains that have to work side by side with the heroes now because it is the end of the world. There was less of a focus on that than what I thought there would be, so I think that buffered my appreciation for the movie a little bit, because I was worried that the movie was going to be nothing but heavy nightmare references. still, I wonder, and still I have to pause and think about why it was a challenge, why it was an issue, why it's been messy so far, not only in the movie, but just getting to this movie and his version of the movie, and a lot of that seemed to be studio interference. That they pushed him to make a project he didn't believe in. They wanted him to do stuff he didn't want to do. And the stuff he didn't want to do, the stuff he did want to do, I'm not sure that it was going to be something I could enjoy all the way around. At one point, I know that we're like 2.5 hours in or something like that, and we still haven't resurrected Superman, which is clearly what he's in the movie. You got to resurrect him somehow. It took us over half the movie to get there. All right, now you're expecting me that the Justice League all learns how to pull it together. 6 different people. It should have been 7, because the early promotion said 7. Who's number 7? Well, the Martian Manhunter is number 7. He is in the Snyder cut of Justice League, entirely omitted from the theatrical version of the film for whatever reason. And good old boy Zack felt that, the other characters were less important. He made more of a focus in this movie on Cyborg and the Flash. And I think Ray Fisher did a good job. I think he was an alright Cyborg. I don't mind that. I really don't agree with Ezra Miller as the Flash, though. He's too much of a neurotic, not to be disparaging, but let's say borderline autistic interpretation of the Flash. It's like, okay, aren't you supposed to be a police scientist? Aren't you, don't you have XYZ together by now? You're basically just some scrawny kid who has no friends, and we're supposed to buy you as the Flash? But that's my issues with Ezra Miller. I don't enjoy that person as an actor. The stories that keep popping up attached to their name and in the press, I don't really enjoy them as a person. And your PR guy is not going to be able to twist that in a way that makes you look anything like a saint. And I'm not saying everybody doesn't have their demons, but when you're in the public eye like that, they just get so much more attention. You're hit with them nonstop. And I don't want to turn this into a critique of Ezra Miller. I've gotten off track. So let's get back to Zack Snyder's Justice League. But we're landing rocky, but we're landing as I watch this movie, because despite the fact that his name's on it, despite all the issues I had up until now, I'm enjoying what I'm seeing. But we get to the final climax of the film, and in order to save the day, the Flash has to go back in time to change the outcome of the fight. Yeah, that's not so unacceptable. I accept that resolution. But once the movie's over, Zack Snyder comes out and he does a press tour about it, and he starts outlining what his plan was. That this wasn't even Justice League, proper Justice League movie. This was using his words. This was the Hobbit to an eventual Lord of the Rings trilogy of Justice League movies. And at some point down the line in this franchise, the Flash has got to go back in time again. It's like, how many times are you going to use that back in time bullet? I don't know. It just it serves to lesson I should have thought I learned a long time ago, that I need to stop listening to the creative people and what their opinions were and what their ideas were, because the more I listen to it, the less I enjoy what I'm watching, because I start thinking, I don't agree with you. I don't think that was a good idea. I don't enjoy that at all. You're an asshole. Quit giving drunk teenagers the keys to the car. Stop it. And I think that's why he doesn't want to direct comic book movies anymore. He doesn't want to direct franchise movies anymore. He doesn't want to direct anything that he doesn't have 100 to 100 creative freedom in making. So, that being said, finally, we have expressed on Zack Snyder. We have had the conversation that's been years in the making. Do you have questions?
I do have some questions, actually. I found some pictures that he's posted recently. I was trying to collect your input on that.
Yeah.
So on Instagram, he shared a post with the picture of Batman, which I'm going to say is from Batman v Superman.
Yeah.
Just talked about how it was one of his favorite Batman video or pictures that he took. Quoted the camera that he used. And then also put another one. Once again, another picture with his camera that he loved so much. Just talked about how there's no question this is Batman.
Yeah.
For one, do you agree with that? I mean, you touched on it. You said that Ben, you thought he did all right.
Is Ben Affleck Batman? I think he did a good job. I was there for it. Now, are there aspects of the character that you're gonna, that you're probably, if you make a Batman movie, is there an aspect of the character that you're probably gonna miss that is important to a lot of people? Like, is there a scene where Batman plays the detective and he solves a crime or something like that? Is he my Batman? No. I don't know who my Batman is. There have been, let's count them. Since 1989, when I was 4 years old, there have been Michael Keaton, Val Kilmer, George Clooney, Christian Bale, and Ben Affleck in a 26-year span or something like that. We've gotten 5 different interpretations of Batman. And there's things to like about all of them. George Clooney, if you're listening to this, I will say I don't think you killed the franchise. There's a lot of scenes from Batman and Robin that I enjoyed very much, especially your conversation with Mr. Freeze at the end of the movie where you remind him of his humanity. I think you did a good job. But there's so many out there for consumption, and they all have good, they all have things that I valued in all of their performances.
Fair.
There's too many to line them up against. There are other characters and other performances out there that they stand so well because you have less to have to compare them to. How many Wolverines have there been? I mean, really, how many Wolverines have there been? One.
One and only.
Hugh Jackman. He has nobody else that he has to compete with.
Well, I mean, let's be fair. that's the most fitting Wolverine you get.
I mean, you had the Cavalry in Deadpool and Wolverine, but what? That's 8 seconds.
Yeah, yeah.
The Cavalry, and it was a great scene. Don't get me wrong,
Love a
but
good cameo.
you only have to look at Hugh Jackman.
Right.
If you want to talk about Iron Man, you only have to look at Robert Downey Jr. And Robert Downey Jr. had 11 years to mess with the character. 11 years worth of opportunity.
Right.
You know, you only have to look at one guy. People had 3 different options. Well, there was technically a 4th live-action Spider-Man, Nicholas Hammond, back in the late 1979, I think. Used to have his, because it was like 8 episodes that I don't know if they ever aired. But anyway, they were printed to Laserdisc, and my folks have a Laserdisc player. And so I was able to watch them on that format. Now, it's never been released physically any other way as far as I know. But it's like, you know, and I've been spoiled, so I'm big into production values. And to go back and watch something low budget done in like the late 70s, the early 80s, it's like rubbing sand in my eyes.
Yeah.
There's nothing there for me.
Fair.
But now in the modern day, let's say we have 3 different live action versions of Spider-Man to choose from: Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, and Tom Holland.
Right.
And once they all and they get to meet each other in Spider-Man No Way Home. Sidebar: nobody will ever believe Andrew Garfield when he says anything ever again, because he's before the movie's about to come out, he swears up and down that he's never gonna. He's the early promotion for No Way Home starts coming out, and he's like, "This is clearly a scene where there's 3 Spider-Men in it, or there's more than one. Are you in this movie? Are you in this movie? No, I'm not in the movie. I'm not in the movie. I'm not in the movie. Fuck you, I'm not in the movie. I'm not in this fucking movie. Stop asking me that question. Oh shit, I'm in this fucking movie." So now nobody's ever going to believe him, and I believe he is commented on the fact that he's basically never going to be believed whenever he gives an interview again.
Right.
So is Ben Affleck my Batman? No, and that's not because he did a good job. He did a good or bad job. He is not my Ben Affleck Batman. He's not my Batfleck because I don't have a Batman. I don't have a favorite. I like them all.
Okay.
Of course, now we've got Pattinson in The Batman, and I'm just I don't know. I don't think he did a bad job. Does an actor do a bad job, or are they just working with the material they were asked to perform on?
Right.
Did he do a bad job for what the director said he wanted? Probably not, but I don't think I'd have chose Matt Reeves to direct The Batman, because we just get another Batman in the real world style movie. The idea of other people running around in capes with superpowers is not stories that Matt Reeves wants to tell in his reality. So he's basically copying out of Christopher Nolan's playbook. But one of the things that I do think is interesting with all the pictures that Zack Snyder is posting on social media recently is that a lot of his fan base seems to think that he is secretly trying to promote a project. That they're like, well, you're showing us all these pictures of Batman we've never seen.
Well, to be fair, that was another one of my questions. Was if you thought this was some type of warning or pre-leak to the fact that he might be doing another Batman v Superman. And I mean, what would you be excited to see another
Another
spin-off for that one, I guess to say?
Another movie in his franchise.
Yeah.
I would watch it. I don't know how excited I would be for it. Is he going to tell one movie at a time, or is he going to try to keep basically kickstarting everything? He's like, well, I'm making this movie, and it's going to promote a movie. It's going to set up a movie 5 movies down the line, but we got to kickstart every single movie along the way. Like we got to hashtag it. We got to fan, we got to community the hell out of this movie to get us 5 movies down the road. I don't want to sign up for that much.
Right.
Tell the one story. Get there. Do that. And that's me. I don't mind all the world building that they did when they said, "Hey, Iron Man, you're in a much larger universe than you think you are." And we, slowly built to the Avengers. We slowly got there. We were not in a rush. But, now we're in a rush. Slowly get there.
Fair.
One movie at a time.
Well, that's fair. So through a lot of the comments, I recognize that people reference him as a visionary and great with his renditions of things. And I mean, just overall, how much do you agree with that?
I guess it's a property. DC is a property that may be too close to my heart, because when it was 300, I didn't have any feelings about it walking in.
Right.
I was ready to just sit there and let whatever he wanted to show me be what I saw. With Watchmen, I didn't read the comic book. I mean, I still haven't read the comic books, at least not properly, before I watched the movie. So I had no opinion about the source material before I watched what he wanted me to see.
Right.
And with Superman, with DC, with Justice League, I had expectation working against me.
Right.
I had my own core principles that I needed those characters to embody, to be there when I watched them for the first time. And so in a lot of ways I felt let down, because I felt he doesn't respect what I wanted. He doesn't respect the source material. He doesn't care about the source material. He doesn't even like superheroes. This and maybe not so much in exact words, but these are the feelings that I'm feeling as I'm reading what his ideas were from a creative standpoint, and why he feels that way. Why don't superheroes get to be innocent anymore?
Right.
Batman's a drunk who basically just goes brawling every night to escape his own misery. Wonder Woman's a recluse who abandoned humanity to their own peril, because she became disillusioned with the world of men after her boyfriend died. And so on and so on and so on. And we're still not seeing the rise up and show humanity a better way that he intended with Superman, because you're not letting us. Like you're too focused on showing the dark side of all these characters. You're too busy dragging them through the mud to show us the Superman can be a symbol of hope.
All right.
And I don't agree with him. I'm not excited. If they announce tomorrow, hey, Zack Snyder's Justice League 2 coming out next fall, I'll watch it. But am I going to be excited for it? Probably not.
Fair enough.
They say, hey, Netflix. Netflix is where we're going to be putting all these Snyder movies out from now on. Netflix's Justice League 2, Justice League 3, Justice League 3.5, Justice League Snyder Cut 2, all the stuff you didn't see in Justice League. And I'll watch it because I want to be informed. I want to know what's going on. I want to be able to say, yeah, I saw it. I gave it a chance. I have an opinion, but I'm not excited. And again, I will make it clear that this is not a critique of him as a person, as a man, as a father, as a fellow human being. It's not. I have no feelings about him. I've never met him. He's probably a very nice man, but as a director, as a creative entity, as someone who's been put in charge of things that I care a lot about, no, I'm not excited for what he does. And I used to be. But I'm not excited anymore. I've lost my enthusiasm. But I've been going to see comic book movies since X-Men came out in 2000. It's like I've seen them all. Why am I going to stop?
Right.
It's like saying, "Hey, are you going to go see the next Marvel movie that comes out?" Well, yeah. Why? I thought you said the last 3 sucked. And it's like, well, yeah, maybe they have, but I've seen them all at this point. And
Keep watching them.
Hopefully I'll get a pleasant surprise, and there'll be 1, 2, 3 down there in the mix somewhere that, there'll be projects that I really enjoy. Because sometimes, yeah, you gotta watch the turd to understand the reference in the gold nugget that comes next.
Right.
So, it's all right. Let me call back to a point I made earlier about the artistic liberties that people take with the material. Sometimes they pay off. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes you just want to do a thing because why not? And his idea was a darker take on Superman, on Jonathan Kent, on that lore. All right, well, I've got one for you. I've got my own artistic flourish in a story that I wrote. Okay, so Power Girl in DC Comics is an alternate universe version of Supergirl who, through whatever means, depending on which writer was in charge of the story, appears on the main Earth where everybody else is. Okay? And depending on who's writing, her origins change. She thinks she's Atlantean at one point. Then she finds out she's from a parallel universe. And just depending on who's telling the story, they make whatever change feels good. But generally, it is accepted that she is a Supergirl from a parallel reality. Here is my artistic flourish. When she first gets to Earth, she arrives as an amnesiac who has all but lost all of her powers. She lands on Earth in an alley. She is butt naked just because of the journey it took to get to Earth. She doesn't understand the language. The first thing she does is basically get chased down a dark alley by a drunk rapist. And she runs right out into the road and gets hit by a car driven by a stripper who takes her in because she doesn't have any insurance. She doesn't want to answer any questions. And so this chick, her name's Kim, she's like, "Oh man, we can't call the cops. Just come with me," and she gets her into the car. And over an undisclosed amount of time, they strike up a friendship. She kind of comes out of her shell. She learns, she picks up the language really fast. She learns to speak Terran English almost within a week. She's just back together, factory reset on the brain. She's got it. Not only is Kim, the character in this story, a stripper, she also, she's been arrested for solicitation. The implication is she's also spent time working as a hooker. Well, because Kim has the added responsibility of another person living with her, she now has the added expense. And Kara, Power Girl, whatever you want to call her, feeling like she needs to help out with the burden she's suddenly placed on Kim. She's like, well, I guess, I need to make money to help out. And I don't have a way to answer any of the questions people are going to ask. So teach me how to do what you do. So all of a sudden, Power Girl has got a dark life as a stripper and a hooker or an escort. Let's call her an escort. And so they do this for a while. And it goes on for long enough that eventually they start hitting the party circuit, and they're like, well, we're going to do a party with these big producers and these Hollywood people. And all of a sudden, Kara's starting to break in more money than Kim does. A lot more money. And at one of these parties is a producer who says, hey, you're pretty hot. How would you like to make movies? You know what I mean when I say make movies, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And so she goes home, and granted, this is all, my personal fan fiction, but it's an artistic flourish that I wanted for the character, just because I'm a guy. And sometimes, we guys think like cavemen.
You're not wrong.
So it's like, all right, well, she gets this business card from, let's just say it, a porn producer who's like, hey, let's come out to LA, let's make some movies. So she goes home. She's like, Kim, I met a guy at this party tonight. He wants us to come out to LA. And, he didn't ask for you. He asked for me kind of conversations. And Kim doesn't like that. Kim is like, you took all the business I've been making. I worked my ass off. I killed myself to take care of you and support you when you had nobody else. How can you abandon me? And she kicks Kara out of the house that night. And Kara's like, well, I guess if I have nowhere else to go, I guess I'm going to do this.
Right.
And not too long later, maybe a year, another undisclosed amount of time, Kara, Power Girl, not in that identity yet, is the most famous porn star on the face of the earth. By an insane margin. An absolute astronomical, the most famous face that has ever graced the adult industry. Well, meanwhile, Kim's in trouble back home. Abusive boyfriend tracks her down and kills her. And by the time Kara gets there, she's dead. The police won't investigate because of her criminal history. They don't care. They're understaffed, underfunded. And maybe I look at it as a testament to the world we live in, that when you have a bad record, very few people are going to care what happens to you. And that is an unfortunate circumstance. I will say that is an unfortunate circumstance. I won't speak to how often it happens in the world we live in. An astronomical amount higher than I could ever imagine.
Oh, I'm sure.
And I hate that for all those people that are affected by it. But so Kim is killed, and Kara's anger issues won't let her accept that. So she does her own manhunt on this guy named Rick, who always hinted whenever he was around that if Kara gave him the time of day, he'd like to seen what she offered.
Right.
All the thoughts that you don't say that are thinking, in your head. He'd like to seen all that stuff. So, trying to lure him out of hiding, she calls him up and she's like, hey, I'm ready for you. Come get it. Free supper. Comes to her apartment, realizes that he's basically walked into a trap, and he starts confronting her. He starts throwing it hard and heavy at her. He even tells her what Kim's last words were before he killed her, and how it's all Kara's fault that she's dead. Well, all of a sudden, all that anger, all that built-up frustration and turmoil, her latent Kryptonian abilities suddenly just come to life. Heat vision just pours out of her eyes like solar flares. She catches the apartment on fire, Smoke detectors are going crazy. Fire alarms are going crazy. Sprinkler system's going crazy. And all of a sudden, outside the window, she sees the flash of just something across the window, and for a brief second she catches it. Superman has arrived. And another factory reset. She gets her memories back on the spot just because she sees that symbol. She makes the connection. Superman saves her. He's like, you're naked, you're in a fire, and you are completely unharmed. There's something different about you. I don't know what it is, but I have an idea. And after he puts out the fires and saves everyone, everyone except Rick. Rick ran out of the building acting like he was chased by the devil himself, ran straight into the road, and in poetic justice got hit by a car.
Nice.
Died on impact. I'm a big fan of poetic justice sometimes. I won't get into that, but big fan of poetic justice. So anyway, that is the end of Kara's life as what she was. Superman's like, well, I'm going to take you to the fortress. We're going to figure this out. I'm going to get you some answers because we know each other, don't we? Something's strange. The fortress does its scans anyway. Life happens. I'm Kara Zor-El from a parallel universe. The fortress crystals confirm a parallel universe. Confirm a parallel Krypton and a parallel Jor-El. And I can't remember her father's name, her father's Kryptonian name at the something Zor-El. Anyway, so he says, "Hey, you're Kryptonian. You're on Earth. We're a family. You need to be one of us. You need to fight for justice." And I don't know what all exactly their conversation is, but once she does the reboot, she wants to be a part of the something bigger family, the Superman family. But she's got one of the most famous faces on Earth. She's got a whole life out there that's very public. And some of the other, the magically oriented ladies in DC Comics, they reach out to her. They say, hey, we understand your situation, and we want to do what we can to help because everybody needs a second chance. And so, in my story at least, Batgirl, Oracle, the queen of computers. In my story, she's got a metahuman talent for it. It's not just that she sat at a computer and learned how to do everything. She actually is a technopath, meaning she can talk to machines, she can talk to computers, she can make cyberspace her bitch. Okay. And so she's like, I'm going to help you out. So Oracle goes through cyberspace, and she can touch everything on the planet with an electric pulse. And she says, every video, every picture, everything out there with your face on it, gone. Erases her from the digital world, down to the last megabyte. Hard drives on some kid's computer, wiped. Everything. Zatanna comes in. She says, I'm going to help you too. It's going to be okay. I am going to confound the population of the planet. And unfortunately, there's a drawback here because everybody that you knew, everybody that knew you, is going to forget that they know you. Every picture they have of you, every picture they have of you, every DVD, every picture on somebody's computer, every picture, that's Oracle's job, but every physical piece of evidence that you are you, that you were you before this moment right here, is going to go away. Every memory, every photograph on somebody's fridge, it's all going to go. Everybody's memories of you before this moment are gone. And it's kind of a monkey's paw consequence of of this magic, and in an instant, all that history disappears. And she gets a fresh start as Kara Zor-Elgin, as Power Girl, as the character that we know formally. And that's my artistic flourish. That is a caveman's artistic flourish on lore that I'm sure there's people out there that give a very large crap about. But if Zack Snyder can make a Superman movie where he breaks someone's neck just to be controversial, just to get a conversation going, just because he wants people talking out the gate, then I have my own artistic flourish to enjoy. But that's me. I doubt anybody's going to come say, hey, I love that idea. Let's make a comic book together.
They're waiting on you.
We'll put my email address in the comments. You just reach out to me. We'll talk. But I think, gang, that is all that we are going to have time for in this episode. It's been fun to finally sit down and discuss Zack Snyder, to give the community the critique and review that I've been promising for years. So we will see you next time. I think our schedule is going to be every 2 weeks, posting to YouTube, posting to Spotify, wherever you meet us. It will be just about every 2 weeks. So stay tuned. There's always going to be more.